It's Hearthstone Grandmasters week number 2 for the European region. We just got to look at Nalgadan, the only shaman in the field this week, who will be taking on ETC later in the Americas region. But for now, we got our 5th match of the day, and that's admirable. I'm joined by Darok Brown, and Darok, we've got a killer match in number 5.
We really do. The arguably, I would say, strongest outcome in the Mage winners last week of Kolento, or at least I should say one of the coolest deck lists, one of the most creative deck lists, with Kolento blazing the trail with Magic Dart Frog in his Mana Cyclone Mage, which I believe he's carried on to this week as well, a very similar deck list, up against Feno, who last week was also bringing Mage, and kind of just saying, I can't believe everyone hasn't brought this deck. It is just the best. And what do you know? It's kind of worked out that everyone has brought Mana Cyclone Mage.
Yep, and we're getting a look at the secondary and tertiary deck list here from Kolento as well. He tends to have something that is just a bit against the grain when it comes to, you know, a lot of tournaments I've seen him play over the years. And Magic Dart Frog, no real exception to that one, but also his secondary deck with a Book of Specters as one of the choices. This is not the Book of Specters list, though.
This whole... what I'm seeing right now is weird. I just can't really get my head around it, because he's got a list that is already heavier on spells than the standard Mana Cyclone Mage is, with the 2 Arcane Missiles and the Frostbolt substituted in the early game. And then for his secondary deck, he puts in Book of Specters, a card which specifically wants you to have as few spells as possible in your deck. I guess just thinking... I mean, I'm not even sure. I guess his secondary deck the anti-mage deck?
Well, it looks to me like an token deck, for instance.
Right.
So you use Book of Specters, find Rabble Bouncers, find Sea Giants, and capitalize on your opponents going one on board. I really like it when I think about it. It's just there to help you find the key cards. Who cares about the spells? You want the Sea Giants, the Rabble Bouncers against the wide boards.
It's interesting, because I would say his secondary deck is either a weird anti-mage deck, or it is the first non-targeted side deck that we've seen so far. Just cards he thinks are good that don't quite fit in the primary deck, which is an interesting way to go with it.
And take a look at Feno's deck list here. You notice that QR code in the top right there. That is functioning and active. If you're too lazy to copy-paste a deck code, you can get even lazier now. Just scan that, boom, you got the deck list. Much more standard and straightforward build with a nod to aggression with the Rabble Bouncers.
I'm looking at the deck list, and I'm trying to think if this is the exact list he was playing last week. I think he might have substituted in a second Frost Nova compared to last week, because I remember last week he was playing the exact list that I was playing on ladder, and so I guess he might have substituted out something at the top end in favor of another Frost Nova. But if he has, Frost Nova is exactly the way you want to be going in this meta when you're up against a lot of Cyclone Mages, because as we saw in that first game between Orange and Pavel, when there's a whole big bunch of boys, or even the third game, when the board is full of giants, you really want to freeze them every single turn, or you're going to die.
Yeah, very lean list here from Feno, going up against a couple of little clever tricks here from Kolento. But 2 weeks in a row now, Dart Frog in the main, and he started out 2-0. Feno started out 2-0, and now one of them has got to drop a match. Who do you think's got the edge?
I would say that overall, I slightly favor Feno's deck in the mirror. I feel like with the double giant that he's got in the primary deck list, that's double sea giant, I think is a really nice way to get more stats on the board early on. And I think a lot of what Kolento's deck is doing does not interact particularly well in the mage mirror. It's a little bit more about doing big, overpowered stuff as quickly as you can. But having said that, we saw from Orange in the previous game, just going for a wide board of minions can be very powerful, and Kolento has an answer to that with Magic Dart Frog.
Indeed he does. Pretty darn good opening hand for Kolento as well. Pretty darn good opening hand for Feno as well. I mean,
yes,
we talked about the power of regression, and we saw Kolento toss away a Frostbolt in his opening draw. I think rightfully so. The only real minion you're looking to pick off is Sorcerer's Apprentice. Your opponent's not always going to have a Banana Buffoon to add to it, and I think Feno's about to get aggressive here, and Kolento might be in trouble early on.
We have been seeing from pretty much every player just Apprentice on 2. Just time and time again, that has been the play to try and get stuff on board as quick as possible.
Look at that. You know what a great way to proactively fight against a Sorcerer's Apprentice on turn 2 is?
Loot Hoarder.
It stops your opponent from playing it.
They have to ping.
It's a pretty good way to react, too. Your opponent has to have Banana Buffoon, or they have to ping, and both of those things slow down their turns.
Yeah, how does he do it? I guess you go for the Banana Buffoon. You don't really want to slow down.
Magic Trick first. Take a look and see if there's anything that blows up the Loot Hoarder, perhaps?
Of which there is. Arcane Explosion into Mana Cyclone is intriguing. It gets stuff on board. You only get 2 spells off of the Mana Cyclone.
I'm thinking the Buffoon. Buffoon, banana. I want a banana. I want a full banana the Sorcerer Apprentice and go face.
So then what's your next couple of turns? You go Banana Buffoon next turn. I guess Sandbinder the turn after is probably what you're looking at.
That's what I'm looking at. Let's explore some iterations here. Let's say you Arcane Explosion Mana Cyclone. You effectively get the same amount of power down, but you keep a Banana Buffoon in your hand instead of expending it in the extra mana immediately. So it's valuable if you draw a second Mana Cyclone, which you have a Sandbinder for.
I think this plays more to the, I was going to say modern theory with this deck.
Ooh.
As he gets a Conjurer's Calling off of the Mana Cyclone. The modern thinking with this deck, as of a few days ago, since Mage has become super popular, is that you just want to get the stats down on the board as quick as possible. You just want to start chipping your opponent with this wide board, which Mage does not interact with very well.
And with the Luna drawn for Kolento, I feel like there's potential for some major pop-offs here.
So what are you thinking? Luna, Coin, Magic Trick, and then you just do some Mana Cyclone stuff?
The problem is...
You're running into hand size issues.
You are running into hand size issues, but... I mean, you're staring down some damage that is going to be compounded.
That's true.
That's what I'm worried about for Kolento. Whose Instinct looks like Arcane Intellect and going to follow through. Wow.
Whoa.
My goodness.
This is a turn. My God. His next few turns, if he picks up a Magic Dart Frog in the next couple turns as well, that's when things start to get really disgusting.
So he is going to play a Mana Cyclone this turn.
Okay.
Ooh.
Snap Freeze, I guess, would be the choice.
Oh, yeah. There's players included in the main right now.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you're afraid of a wide board, can you ever go for the... Whoa!
He's going double Cyclone as well! He's not. He's not. Okay.
Yeah.
He wants to draw.
That would have been crazy.
Since he doesn't have a giant, he needs the draw. That's what he's saying here.
Double Conjurer's Calling and 2 freeze effects has to be the best Mana Cyclone I've ever seen. All of these cards are fantastic in this mirror.
Now, that being said, I mean, Fino's got pressure rolling right now. So the long game, I feel like, is less of a consideration than the immediacy. And, you know, Fino's hand's pretty face up, I think, in terms of where his direction's headed.
Okay.
It's start beating up Kolento.
Yeah.
I think if Kolento gets past this aggressive push, that's where he's going to find that big edge and perhaps, you know, a win because he's got all this value. But that's not always the case. And, you know, Kolento, I feel like oftentimes is in this position. As soon as he recovers, that's when he has the edge.
Yeah.
My question is, can he recover this game?
Well, the missing piece in his combo here is something to cast Conjurer's Calling on.
Or mana.
Well, I suppose mana at the moment is his restriction. But, like, without Mountain Giant or Sea Giant, he cannot make this hand do what it is meant to do very well.
Luna is actually a big point of pressure as well.
Just another minion that really wants to be answered. I guess it's another Mana Cyclone turn?
Someday I'll be just like you.
This is a very large hand size being generated and a huge amount of value for Kolento here. He just really wishes he'd been able to find the Magic Dart Frog.
Interesting. So he's going for the mirror image into the Mana Cyclone. 1, 2... Oh, he's like 6 cards.
Yeah, perfectly sequenced.
Not good pickups on that one.
Yeah, that's a little bit less tempting. The Fireball to have an immediate answer to something is not that bad, I would say.
Notice also that Kolento took out the Sorcerer's Apprentice here. Like, that was, you know, very easily his ideal target. The Luna is much worse if you don't have a Sorcerer's Apprentice in play.
True. Behold the tools of creation.
Oh!
You called?
Are you kidding?
The train does stop there, unfortunately, though. But still, Fino has a good amount of stuff on board, and I wonder if he actually doesn't attack here just so that he has the higher chance of getting Sea Giant down on the following turn.
Well, the problem... Actually, this Sorcerer's Apprentice may have been a little bit of a blunder, because the problem is Fino is running into situations where it's just checked face up right now.
What do you mean?
It's just going to die. Like, what benefit did it actually provide?
Well, it had the upside of potentially turboing through his deck. He didn't know that Arcane Intellect was going to be the next card. Right?
What is going to be the next card?
Well, something he can play, a 1-mana spell. There's quite a few in the deck. That was the hope, and even if not, you've just played it. Like, is it that good in this hand right now? You don't want to be going for Sorcerer's Apprentice stuff with this hand. You want to be going for Sea Giant stuff and making an unbeatable board.
Well, he's following through the way that I hoped he was, which was adding stats with the bananas.
Tempo. He realizes getting stats on board is good, as Kolento has up to and including 8 activations of Conjurer's Calling available to him over the next few turns.
So this is the turn for Kolento where I think things could really start to change, where the Blizzard being discounted by his own Sorcerer's Apprentice, I think is a big deal. He gets to wipe out the board, he just yields initiative to Fino. But with a Snap Freeze in hand, with the number of Conjurer's Callings he has, I feel like that's okay. He's even got a Fireball.
You want him to Blizzard.
Effect. I think this is a Blizzard turn.
Blizzard full clear.
Fino clearly has been opting to draw aggressively.
He has 6 cards in hand, 7 with the Giant. So Mounted Giant would be exactly playable if he Blizzards and trades. I just don't know that's like strong enough of a play.
If you don't Blizzard now, you're going to start dying.
Well, if you're looking at Blizzard, why not go for Fireball? Because it still clears the board, right? And you keep Blizzard, which is a better card in the matchup.
That's an excellent point.
Okay. Yeah.
So now you get the NA side of it, is where you always want to go face with everything. So rather than Fireball the minion in this spot, you'd much rather save that Fireball and go face. How does it feel now to cast with an NA perspective?
Pretty good. I'm having fun. As this was very nicely figured out by Kolento as well. I'm not certain that he figured out the exact breakpoint that meant Sea Giant would not be playable, but I would be very unsurprised if he did calculate that in.
It would have to be Mirror Image and
into Giant.
And which would mean that Kolento has Blizzard and Snap Freeze to respond.
Gorgeous.
Wow.
That's true, in the exact manner as well. Whew. And still now for Kolento, just praying, hope upon hope, that he can find something to cast these Conjurer's Callings on. He could just throw them down on the Sorcerer's Apprentice over the next couple of turns, but it's pretty far from ideal. Especially as Fino is playing 2 copies of Rabble Bouncer in his primary deck. As we see there.
I like the Dart Frog.
On this turn or
Not on
in
this
general?
turn, just in general.
As a card or as an inclusion?
As an inclusion.
Right.
Also as a card. I played a lot with this list in particular because I was like, what in the world? It was just pretty good.
Is ours.
I mean, it's going to be all right here. Draws a card off the Luna.
Tools of
Tony is
creation.
not what you're looking for here, really. Yeah, this did not work out great. But I can understand Kolento's thinking on this turn, which was, if he went for something passive like, I don't know, God forbid, Luna's Pocket Galaxy, which he could have just played on this turn, that doesn't make Fino's life difficult on this turn. It would give Fino full opportunity to just go for a big Conjurer's Calling turn, and then Kolento is way behind in this matchup. Whereas by playing the Luna, it does just make it that little bit more awkward for Fino to properly respond.
I really wanted to play the Galaxy.
You really wanted to play the Galaxy?
I really did.
I mean, obviously you want to play the Galaxy, but you can't.
It's really bad.
You're not allowed. And I like this trade a lot as well.
Yep. Considerations for Sea Giant and Rabble Bouncer.
For exactly Rabble Bouncer, I think. Because, well, actually, I guess Sea Giant just being able to be played at all for a bit cheaper. But mainly the fact that he could have gone exactly Rabble Bouncer into Conjurer's Calling at 4 mana had he not traded.
And so for Fino, do you... like, what do you do?
Rabble Bouncer double banana and kill off the Luna? Like, leaving up Luna is not that bad in this instance, I will say.
Just that hand is so big, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the Dart Frog as being the target that could really send this all packing.
Interesting.
If your opponent has a bunch of random spells that are cheap and the Dart Frog sticks, what can they do to you as a result?
As Fino going to be pretty sad there to get the another Cyclone instead of the much more important Sea Giant at this point. But that'll make it a little bit more palatable, I'll imagine. Did he account for hand space there? I think maybe the banana should have come down after the the mana cyclone there because he's just going to burn a card now.
He might have just wanted the spells.
Unless he just rips the elemental evocation like a god.
There's a chance he just wants the spells, though.
More than a card off the top of his deck.
I think it's possible.
I think it's possible. I would say that's a mistake if he did believe that.
I think you're free to say that.
Oh, it's a free country. I can say whatever I... Actually, no. I can't say whatever I like. I'm live on broadcast. But I will say that Fenomeno, if he was if he was planning to overdraw a card there, was a mistake.
This game is weird.
And Kolento really has been playing on the back foot for the entire time, as he considers just jamming the Antonidas.
No, I don't believe that.
Blizzard is a full clear with the activation from the Dart Frog as well.
Yeah, you can rip the missiles with it if you really wanted to.
Right, sure. Fino's face perfectly encapsulates my reaction.
Why wouldn't you just do that last turn?
Yes.
That's what I'm wondering. Dart Frog, what are you doing?
Go home, Dart Frog. I mean, it's a little bit sad, I guess, for Fino that he doesn't have the ability to target anything with these Scorches on the turn where they're reduced. But just being able to go with something like this. But now for Kolento, if he does get himself a big minion, he can swing this back. But he needs it pretty soon. Not now, Banana Buffoon.
It's looking like Blizzard, Blizzard and Snap Freeze.
Blah, blah, Blizzard. I guess. Yeah. Still delaying this game, sending Fino almost all the way back to square one.
Uh-oh.
But because of that 1 minion on board, we could just see another Sea Giant coming down. Which is that little couple of pixels on the left-hand side, in case you were wondering.
I wonder if the orange play is ever involved here.
What to do?
What's the orange play?
What to do?
Conjurer's calling the Sandbinder. Worked out very well for him in the third game.
What's Kolento playing in his deck? He's not playing the Snap Freezes, I believe, in his main deck. So he is left somewhat light on answers for the Sea Giant. I think a lot of Orange's thinking in that last game is Pavel was playing double Snap Freeze, and therefore just playing a Giant was much more susceptible to being killed off. But by the same merit, I believe Kolento is only playing one Sea Giant and no Rabble Bouncers, so the punish for going wide on board is also a lot less, leading Fino to go for a play like this and getting some respectable outcomes.
Yep. Now you take 1 damage every turn from the Blood Witch.
Dang nabbit, he's only got 27 turns to win now. And just nightmare draws here for Kolento.
He doesn't have the pressure.
So if we were to see Archmage Antonidas on this turn...
You would die very promptly afterwards.
Well, I mean, you know, you can go for Mirror Image as well.
Mind you, Fino has a counterspell.
Good point. I mean, can Kolento live in Counterspell world? Does he just have to pretend that it's not that and do the best thing he can?
So I guess Kolento was actually considering the Archmage, saying, this minion has Super Taunt. My opponent has to kill it. Maybe they don't have a way to.
There must be a way.
So. Super Taunt, of course, referencing the fact that you really want to kill it. Super Taunt is not actually an effect in Hearthstone. It's just, if you don't kill it, a lot of the time, you will just die.
Minion with Super Stealth cannot have Super Taunt.
A minion with Super Stealth, you literally just can't see it when your opponent plays it. It's just invisible.
It just pops up and attacks. Like, where'd that come from?
As there we go. Counterspell activating there. And Kolento just hoping to get a miracle here.
Rush.
That's okay. With missiles.
Oh, he's got to make a choice.
Yeah, he needs to do it right.
He's got to hurry up.
That's okay. Wrong one, but those are some...
He didn't want to attack. He wanted the mech instead.
Okay, why not?
Attach Zilliax, perhaps?
Okay, fair enough, actually. Yeah, then I guess it was the right choice. I stand corrected. But now for Fino,
boy.
what are we looking at here? This is Flame Strike to completely clear the board due to the +1 spell damage on the Ogre Magi. And then 10 damage to the face. It's not quite lethal, I don't think.
What to do?
He just checks if Scorch can go face. Just checking.
So Rabble Bouncer Flame Strike then?
I guess. That is such a Fino thing there, of being so incredibly good at Hearthstone,
Wait,
but
he could
not
Rabble
knowing if
Bouncer
Scorch can go
and
face.
Sea Giant and Flame Strike.
He could have done.
I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters either. I don't think there was any reason not to, though. That is absolutely nothing there for Kolento. He needs a miracle off this Archmage Antonidas, but it's not even doing. Doesn't want to roll the Conjurer's Calling. I don't think there was anything that could have even got him there. Fino, again, with his Conjurer's Calling. Mana Cyclone Mage, putting up quite a display.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to get even tougher for Kolento after that. Snap Freeze and 2 Big Game Hunters being added in on Fino's secondary deck, where he takes out his Ziliax and 2 Rabble Bouncers, of which the Rabble Bouncer, he didn't even want to play in that game. He said, yeah, this is how stupid it is. I'm just not even going to use it.
I guess so.
Who needs 2/7 taunts extra?
I think the interesting thing that we may start to see evolve, though, in this particular matchup, and also with Mage against Warrior, is how good actually is Big Game Hunter against Mage. Because I feel like we may actually evolve past the point with tech inclusions of Big Game Hunter. I think it might be phased out because of the counterplay that is available, as Orange highlighted, where he's saying, you know, a lot of the time, you can just go wide on board early on because you don't want them to go for the snap freezes and Big Game Hunters and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming weeks, tech inclusions like Big Game Hunter are not the choice against Mage.
It sounds pretty smart to me. It's looked sluggish at best, except for, you know, it's Casey, in which case it blows you out of the game because he's dominating you on board. So game 1 is in the books. We got game 2 and potentially game 3 coming up. It's our 5th series of the day for the Hearthstone Grandmasters European region. Don't go anywhere.
Well met, friend. Ooh.
Let's get this over with. I win!
Oh, what an amazing game! Oh, well played!
Here's to the winner.
My name is Casper. My alias is Hunter-Ace. My username actually goes way, way back. I didn't actually come up with it myself. My father is like somewhat of a gamer and he had like his own gaming stuff. But what I did was I just stole one of his tags and used it for myself.
So Hunter is really your dad?
Well, not anymore. Right now I reached like my ultimate goal for this year. We happened to win the World Championship and that was like the biggest thing. So I'm like still extremely happy about that. I think that the Grandmaster program provides an exciting opportunity to be able to play like high competition Hearthstone every week. Only competing against the EU players to start with is going to be a very difficult job, and it's going to be super hard to be like one of the standout performers and then qualify to the global finals. I would have to stay at my best to be able to qualify.
Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe is underway. It's our 5th and final match of today, Saturday and Sunday. We got plenty more matches coming up. We're in game number 2, Feno versus Kolento, and a bit of a twist here with how the secondary decks end up shaking out in this one, Derek.
Yeah, a bit of a weird kind of mirroring of what both players are putting in and taking out, because Feno is taking out both copies of his Rabble Bouncer and Ziliax to slot in an extra Snap Freeze, or sorry, the only Snap Freeze in his deck, and 2 Big Game Hunters, obviously the primary reason of which to kill Giants early on. Sea Giants, Mountain Giants, you just want to get rid of them before Conjurer's Calling can be cast on them. Kolento, however, going with a slightly different route. He's actually slotting in a Rabble Bouncer as well as a Sea Giant.
Yeah, he's adding in a Book of Specters, a Sandbinder, a Rabble Bouncer, and a Sea Giant. He's taking out 1 Arcane Missiles, 1 Frostbolt, 1 Loot Hoarder, and the Archmage Antonidas. Very interesting.
I mean, all the cards he's taking out make sense because Antonidas is generally too slow. The early spells generally don't do all that much. And so having the extra Sea Giant in, and the Book of Spectres in particular, could be incredibly powerful.
I mean, Book of Spectres gets more powerful the less spells you have in your deck.
Right.
Is it just there to dig for specific minions?
I mean, I would think it's to just try and get down as consistently as possible the first Mountain Giant, because even though the talk amongst the pros is that you don't have to go for the Mountain Giant into Conjurer's Calling play to win the mirror, it's still good. There's other lines you can take, but there's a reason why the reputation of the deck is that it only does that one thing. It obviously can do other things, but that's one of the best things it can do.
Ooh.
Kolento here.
Some cute plays here.
Yeah, obviously it has the ability to kill off the Aluna. Double Frostbolt, I think, would kill it off without even the Dart Frog having to attack in.
I was looking at potentially Dart Frog Evocation Ray of Frost as well. Would that do it? Yeah, that does 4 damage.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think having 2 of these on board is actually like quite problematic for Feno, because then next turn you have 2 damage represented with the Arcade Missiles, and you have 4 represented with the second Ray of Frost.
I think I agree. And the
That's weird.
second Ray of Frost is good in this matchup. Just being able to freeze a singular minion is pretty important.
Oh my.
I like this a lot.
Wow. That's a backstab.
This is what the
He just
frogs
turned
were born
elemental.
to do.
He just turned elemental evocation into a backstab. And the Magic Dart Frog is the SI7 agent. It's Rogue Mage.
Dual class is arena only no longer.
And it actually is kind of a Rogue Mage deck. It's the only person playing Dart Frog in the main.
Nice. Very. Didn't get what you were going for there at first. It was a joke above my head.
Ooh, the Rebel Bouncer. You know, yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Man, this is the situation where you really, really wish that these had the Flame Waker effect instead. And you could just destroy your opponent. Like, Feno would just die. And I get the Magic Dart Frog would obviously be pretty overpowered if it could do that, but
It'd be... In some respects, it would be.
it would get worse in some ways.
Yeah, like when you just miss.
Right,
You go,
exactly.
wow, I really needed to kill that 9-1.
Right, it's like the debate back in the day was always, why is my Knife Juggler able to target face? I wish it could just target minions.
Oh,
And then you hit them in the face for 6 damage or something after you masters.
Spell Knife Juggler. Wow. I just realized that. That's so cool.
I guess you're right. I guess it's also a baby Ragnaros that activates whenever you cast a spell instead of at the end of your turn.
And it can attack.
Wow. It's just like it.
I wonder.
So Kolento here, Feno here, really just wondering when does he go off? Because his immediate game plan is quite clearly Mana Cyclone. To which he needs to think, next turn, am I locked into playing Big Game Hunter? Obviously, Kolento would not be able to play Mountain Giant on the following turn, so not necessarily that he has to play Big Game Hunter next turn. This is not gonna work.
This is, no, it's not. This is very bad and dangerous.
Or is it? is my question, because by going for this play and kind of baiting Kolento into going for the Sea Giant, but not really, he does set up the big game hunter.
You are correct.
Which is
There's
interesting.
more than meets the eye here.
Reflect.
And that's not necessarily a good thing, because if possible, he would obviously much rather play his own Sea Giant than have to BGH down Kolento's Sea Giant. But it does mean that he has counterplay to Kolento's line.
I imagine that means Kolento's probably on... Yeah, just Sea Giant. It's really tough to not Sea Giant here.
If he were to go Rabble Bouncer Sea Giant, yeah, he could trade in. There's no way that Fino can go Sea Giant and Big Game Hunter, even if Rabble Bouncer were to come down as well. And so I wonder if because of that you do just play Rabble Bouncer as well.
There must be a way.
Kolento is very interested in just simply clearing off. Oh, he's preventing Fino from getting his own Sea Giant. It's costly.
Okay.
It's cost 5 mana now. There's no way he can spend 5 mana on a Sea Giant this turn.
Yeah, I think I like this. I at first was thinking the Rabble Bouncer is more important to get down, but like you said, it's the denial of Sea Giant on this turn, because Fino could have gone for Sea Giant plus Ray of Frost or Sea Giant Snap Freeze if the mana had been there. Now that's not available.
This is so smart.
These Dart Frogs are doing work.
Yeah, now Fino's relegated to the Big Game Hunter, and now Kolento has a chance to counterplay that by continuing to take advantage of the frogs. He gets to use Magic Trick in this instance.
And now for Kolento, the refill turn comes into play whilst his Mana Cyclone and the Dart Frogs will just completely clear the board.
This is crazy.
At the same time, though, while what Kolento is doing is clearly very powerful, with one fell swoop, Fino could undo all of this if he finds the right series of cards.
It's true, but right now he's suffering a lot from being able to just simply take advantage of his normal tempo plays. Like, it's being disrupted.
Yeah. Are we going to see the Research Project come down?
I think that there's a pretty high likelihood you do. Honestly, Research Project to me has been one of the more interesting cards that I've seen people attempt to include in these decks.
It allows Fino to go exactly Mountain Giant into Conjurer's Calling on his turn, though, which is bad from your current position for Kolento.
That means he's not going to do it then.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just a little bit too scary.
And now, Kolento has board.
Yes, true.
This further disrupts Fino. He has an answer with Blast Wave, but that was randomly generated.
So what is he looking at this time? Blast Wave generates no spells, given that none of them would be overkilled by the 2 damage it does to everything. Sandbinder on this turn.
You also just float a mana when you Blast Wave.
Okay. I mean, these frogs at the moment are actually really not bad for Fino at all.
And honestly, well, the thing that I'm seeing that's bad is that Kolento just gets to play Rabble Bouncer that starts to threaten Conjurer's Calling stuff. Like, it's very nominal pressure that Kolento's built, but to me, the big story is that Kolento has disrupted the normal game plans from Fino.
Has he, though? How has he stopped Fino from just being able to go with Mountain Giant, Conjurer's Calling? Like, that's the standard game plan, right? And Fino just hasn't drawn it more so than Kolento has specifically disrupted it.
Well, the normal thing that Fino would be doing is just taking advantage of the fact that he has tempo plays with the big game. Like, the Big Game Hunter got fully taken care of.
Right.
Was it a liability for Kolento in that instance? Yes, he lost a Sea Giant, but no, not really. He kept board and is forcing Fino's hand.
So I guess he hasn't stopped Kolento from going for the ideal route he would like to go for, but the kind of tertiary win condition of going for a big Mana Cyclone, a wide board early on, Kolento has that absolutely checked. Which I think is very fair enough. But these Dart Frogs are not winning him the game. They're stopping him from losing on the spot to a wide board plan from Fino. But that's not necessarily that powerful. Wow. 2 research projects become a lot more tempting, actually. When you pair them together and you can start to overdraw your opponent some cards. And I guess as well, the fact that these Dart Frogs are in play kind of stops
Mana.
Fino from going for Conjurer's Calling there.
These are 2-mana cards that just stopped a lot of development on Fino's side, a lot of setup on Fino's side. They're just occupying time. And now look, Kolento gets to draw cards, and Fino basically does not.
The double research project here, absolutely huge. I mean, overdrawn cards are not the be-all and end-all in this matchup. Fino already has a lot of what he wants. Snap Freeze is kind of scary. Loses a pretty big answer there. Sorcerer's Apprentice as well, actually, is a pretty terrible overdraw when you have 2 Banana Buffoons in hand. I guess you're right, that even though the Dark Frogs are not winning the game for Kolento, they're just keeping him in it
Yeah,
constantly. They're just killing everything.
It's just annoying.
Yeah,
You remember we were talking about in that first match? Like,
I do.
the people in strategy games, like, they do little annoying things, and it just beats you.
Yeah. Ooh, I like the Snap Freeze very much. Even getting down the mountain giant as well. This turn for Kolento has been insane! Fino still unable to go with a Sea Giant Conjurer's Calling Plate.
And Fino's getting chipped away. I mean, it was like 2 turns ago, Kolento had like 2 cards in hand.
Yeah. Now, however, it looks like we're loading up for Fino to go for a big old Mana Cyclone turn here, I would imagine. You need to think about which cards are expendable and which ones he needs to hold on to.
Not only that, but like, that Dart Frog is ticking me off. If I'm in Fino's spot, it's ticking me off. I've had it with that Dart Frog. I want it gone.
I would want it gone as well, which I imagine is why he's probably going to end up pinging it. Maybe he won't, actually. Depending on how many cards he has to get rid of here, and how many good ones he gets. That'll do it.
Yeah, that's pretty ideal.
Finally, he's killed the frog. It's a good death sound as well.
Yeah. That Dart Frog dying to me was a good death sound. It was annoying. It's so much work.
Yeah,
They've killed like
so
6
much work.
minions.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, if I'm
Plop it.
trying to get my head in the right mindset for this matchup, Fino would just be so far ahead on board if Kolento hadn't had them at the start. And now what are we looking at? That I'm not even sure what that card is on the far left-hand side.
Frost Nova.
That's Frost Nova. Oh, yeah, okay. The staff, of course.
What a buffoon.
I mean, Fino's just doing stuff right now. He's playing on the defensive now, whereas Kolento has been for this entire game. Both players still unable to find that one crucial turn to go with Conjurer's Calling.
Fino had one. I'm sorry, Kolento had one of his Conjurer's Callings discarded in that Book of Spectres.
Yes, he did. Excellent point. I don't think we actually commented on that.
I wonder.
But with only 9 cards left in the deck, the second one can only be so far away. Especially with an Arcane Intellect as well in hand.
I knew that somehow this Mana Cyclone was, I'm sorry, the Sea Giant was going to die this turn.
Yeah.
Wasn't necessarily envisioning that, and now,
There we go.
possibilities.
Okay. So what are we looking at? Rabble Bouncer plus Conjurer's Calling seems tempting.
There's a chance it's not this turn that it happens, but something that I'm going to talk about here real quick is that Kolento has removed the Archmage Antonidas
Must be a
from his
way.
deck.
Yes.
And I feel like in this game, Archmage Antonidas could have been a big player.
It absolutely would have been. If he'd had it at this point, like last time, he could have just dumped it with a bunch of cheap spells.
Yeah, that's like, to me, that's one of the things I look at, actually, is I feel like the Dart Frogs are quite a brilliant call with Archmage Antonidas. It does counteract each other a little bit, as you want to be expending your cheap spells,
Yeah.
but the deck clearly has no shortage of cheap spells.
Yes.
Wow.
Pretty Premier 7 drops you're looking at there.
I would say a significant upgrade.
Yeah. Considering a lot of the time you're looking at Soul Thief Azalina and Lord Godfrey and the low rolls like that, this is much, much more like it. Now Kolento having to factor in not only his own game plan, but how can he disrupt what Fino's doing? How does he make Sea Giant less playable? But unfortunately for him, he cannot stop Fino from being able to go Sea Giant Conjurer's Calling on this turn.
Just like you.
This is a big turn.
I like starting with the magic trick. Maybe he finds himself a mirror image.
Conjurer's Calling.
Ooh. So if he can get just one of these Sea Giants to stick around, or one of the minions generated by the Sea Giant, he's looking to be in a pretty good position. Hakar is spicy.
That's dangerous for both of them.
It's not especially good, but it's definitely interesting. Oh, man.
I am very worried. I'm worried for both of them. And Kolento, I'm a bit more worried for.
Runs out on me.
If he can find himself Khadgar, then he can obviously go for a very explosive play on this turn. But Fino's still got those Frost Novas for if, for if Kolento does go for an explosive turn like that.
Wow, I'm lost. I don't know what to do if I'm in Kolento's spot. I mean, you're probably just on hoping Mirror Image can provide blockers over the right number of turns. So, like, how do you isolate the board down to where Mirror Image can leverage your board position? Like, does that mean you ever Conjurer's Calling off the 5/6 taunt and try to use the Mirror Image to protect the presence that you have in play?
It's definitely something to think about. You're worried about Fino going for the second Sea Giant? I mean, you already know he's going to make a big broad presence. That's kind of taken for granted already. Ooh. So really it's just about trying to do something, and Kolento here is going to do a lot.
Frost.
Ooh, that is a premier pickup there.
Fine. I think the forward thinking here is much more about this is a 5/6 versus a 6/6 that I'm exchanging.
Right. It's not bad. Night Scale Matriarch is just decently well statted.
Well, first, Hakar dies. Fino gets the first draw at it, and he draws the Corrupted Blood right away.
Because of course he does.
But Kolento's got 6 cards.
Yeah, he's more likely to start finding them. As now, Fino, I mean, what can we even see here?
Mountain Giant, Frost Nova, use Conjurer's Calling.
Yeah, you definitely want to play the Frost Nova on this turn. Does he ever go Counterspell instead of Conjurer's Calling? Because he already has a lot of damage on him.
You know that they just have a bunch of random spells.
Yeah. You're right.
But I don't know. I mean,
he's going for it, though. He's just throwing down the Counterspell.
I imagine that one's going to stay in hand.
Yes. I'll give you that one.
And now I think Kolento's back in trouble. He can't make enough. I mean, there's still all the opposing 2 healths and 2 attacks are still in play. Like,
was that Counterspell good?
Observe and reflect.
How many of
Probably.
these mirror images are randomly generated by Kolento?
Honestly, it's probably good because even here, it just stops that, right? So that's more damage. If Kolento goes for the Arcane Missiles first, it stops that, which potentially stops Kolento limiting your damage.
He just quite drastically limits the amount of damage you're actually pushing, especially as for Fino. If he doesn't get taunt in the next turn, you might have to start trading, which is a nightmare. He really wants to push face.
So what I'm looking at is that little chip damage that Kolento ended up buying early on, combined with the Corrupted Bloods that come from Hakar now. Like, that's the break point that Kolento's at where Fino can start to be in trouble. Fino has to deliver a killing blow, I think, relatively soon.
Yeah. And so Kolento really needs to start looking at mirror images on this turn. Okay, I'm glad that's coming down, because without that, I think Fino would have been 1 damage off lethal with double banana, or maybe 2 damage off. Either way, these mirror images are pretty crucial. And now for Fino, he's going to struggle to trade effectively.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
Oh,
Huge draw for Fino.
that is insane.
That might secure it.
So he double trades, pushes everything face. How does he lose? He loses if Hakar activates. Even if he Conjurer's Calling his Hakar, then there's 3 bloods in the deck. He cannot die, even if he gets them all one after the other. But even so, you could just Conjurer's Calling your Giant instead, right? Just leave the Hakar alive.
I'm trying to figure out which one gives them the best chance to secure the win overall, because something that I'm thinking about is the potential for Kolento to, draw his own freeze effect and perhaps, get more time as a result for your Corrupted Bloods to pop off. It's very minute things that he's having to think about right now. You also could leave Kolento's board full, Conjurer's Calling, and perhaps kill him in one fell swoop on the following turn. I think that's a little bit risky, though.
It's interesting. I think I preferred this from Fino. Just set up lethal the vast majority of the time. As look at the board that he's generating here. Kolento absolutely needs a freeze right now to be able to stay alive.
Not a freeze.
That's not it. He can draw a card.
You have to draw cards.
Does he even have the magic trick to look for the Frost Novas left?
Has he expended all of his freeze at this point? He has to draw. He can't just die.
Yep. It's only shot. It only gets him one mirror image.
Behold the tools of
And that's not it. Fino 2-0 over Kolento. Just builds a big board and starts beating him up.
That was a weird last game, though. We're seeing a lot of these matches where neither player really gets what they're looking for, because for Fino there, it was mainly a lack of Mountain Giants, I think, because he had a very, very big hand size for the vast majority of the game, but he couldn't get anything on board to cast these Conjurer's Callings on. Whereas for Kolento, those Magic Dart Frogs in the beginning really shut down the alternate win conditions for Fino, which is just go wide on board, try and chip down your opponent over those next few turns. But the problem was that after Kolento had cleared the board, he couldn't capitalize on that. There was no way to actually push for a win of his own. It was all just a little bit too defensive rather than aggressive pushing for the win.
And whether it's a lack of tools or just the game plan being a bit too watered down or thin, whatever it's going to be, you have to have the pressure to follow up and capitalize. Although I do have to admit that I think Kolento took the advantage in the early game at the very least. But it sounds like Fino, we have an interview with him. Fino, can you hear us?
Hey guys, yeah, what's up?
What's up? Congratulations, 3-0 now, and you've been doing it all with Mage. Last week, you said you couldn't believe that there were people who played Control Warrior, and you talked about the power level of Mage, and it showed up in full force this week. Talk to me about the Mage deck, kind of what changes you were anticipating from other players, so on and so forth. Big balance patch happened. What are your thoughts going on?
Well, I mean, I told you last week that I think Mage is the best deck. And now that Rogue is kind of gone, in my opinion, it gets even better. Yeah, I don't know. It's just the best deck. We tried in practice to find decks that are good against Mage. I played a Hunter list together with Mazi that had Spider Bombs and 9 lives to raise Spider Bombs and Deadly Shots and big game Hunters. It doesn't matter. Mage still wins. Mage is still favored. It's just crazy to me how good this deck is and how good Conjurer's Calling is. And I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's the deck to play right now. It's the deck to get good at, because mirrors are actually pretty hard. You need to know what you're doing in the mirrors. You can go, the most aggressive plan is most of the time the best plan. And it's just the deck to beat.
And so we remember when we were talking to you last week when you had Hexlord Malakras in your anti-warrior list. We pretty quickly got rid of that one and pretended we never got that in there.
Yeah, he's sitting it out this week.
Yeah, exactly. But with your anti-mage deck, I wanted to talk about the big game hunters. Do you feel like they are well situated in the mage mirror, or like you're talking about?
No.
Yeah, because you can go wide on board.
I also don't like my deck against mage.
Right. Okay.
I think I didn't have enough time to test the questing adventures. I think questing adventure might actually be good. I wanna test it a bit more. I didn't have enough time to test it, and I wouldn't play 2 BG8s. I think 1 is fine. The threat of 1 is fine, but I would probably play another Snap Freeze if I could, because that card is just so easy to play. You can use it as a freeze a lot of the time, which is also not bad. And I don't know, BG8's the problem with BG8 is that if your opponent does something with Conjurer's Calling, it's useless. You can't just spend a turn 5 mana dealing with one guy and then be like, oh, now you can value trade and Conjurer's Calling again and I'll lose. That's the problem with BG8. So I don't think I would submit 2 if I could again, but... Yeah.
And so you think that the big problem with this deck is just that it's overpowering and just there's nothing out there that handles it? What kind of situation? I mean, we saw Casey make pretty quick work of this deck. With Bomb Warrior.
It can get aggroed down. Yes, that's the only. I think that's the way that Bone Warrior beats you. Like, I see a lot of people saying that double Super Collider, double BGH list is just favored against Mage. I really don't think so. I think if they don't get the early game and the pressure you early, I think Mage is pretty favored, and they just run out of cards and run out of stuff to deal with your guys.
All right.
Yeah, that's the way you lose. You just die. You just get out-tempoed.
That's how I've been losing with the deck, just getting up-tempoed in general.
Yeah, that's the only way you lose, like, ever against any deck.
Is that why you included the double Rabble Bouncer?
I mean, people were telling me that water elementals are good. I tested them; they were terrible. And then I'm like, I'd rather just have this to, like, maybe sometimes defend myself. And I mean, 7-drops are not bad a lot of the times. Like, sometimes they help. Like, I didn't know this 7-drop that Kolento got was a minion. I've never got it from Conjure's Code. They're like 5/9 ton. I'm like, what is this? Is this a new card?
Furious Etten!
Yeah, that's pretty good. Most of them are bad, though.
Well, all right. Fino, I think that wraps up all of our questions for you for now. 3-0 start to Grandmasters is looking pretty darn good. Look forward to seeing you play in the next couple days.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.
Take care.
3-0 Fino.
3-0 Fino.
3-0 Fino.
Or 3-0 3-0.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
There's a joke in there somewhere.
Let's go ahead and take a break for this one. That's going to wrap up our European Grandmaster segment, which means we're headed over to Americas after that, which means TJ has to be dancing off to the side while Frodan is next to him acting like a gentleman before we bring them onto the desk. So stay tuned. We got the post show coming up.